Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or a student. Four things on my list today as titles. It's a Monday, so that's pretty good. There's not too many, and it doesn't seem like I have too much to say about any of them. Number one is letting you know, my number one title is that my focus is on my presenters. So in terms of, and that thought went through my mind, this broadcast is for you because you're watching. Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates because they have a formal agreement with the brand, and the Core New Core, which has to do with those who connect to Core New in and of its own right with no further explanation than that. The body of Core New in those who perhaps embody it or are aware of it. That's as much as I've tried to explain that ever. But the Core New Core, and then before that, it went Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, and then coming into that now is Michael Miller Pilates licensed presenters. Because my number one title is, my focus is on my presenters. And my presenters are those who explain these five things, who go over these five things to explain two things. Just being a presenter, explaining two things, and the whole explanation is just discussing these five things at whatever level you make the presentation. Representatives. Number two. So from Joe's book, Contrology is Complete Coordination of Body, Mind, and Spirit. Number two reads, in MMP, quote, body, mind, and spirit, end quote, is, quote, being, thinking, and observing. Sometimes I don't think I do well enough at just explaining basic stuff or putting it out there so that it can resonate on its own or not. But body, mind, and spirit in MMP is being, thinking, and observing. And then where does that go? Where's one step beyond that becomes part of your presentation? Because the first thing in your presentation is Joe's definition. And the first time around the merry-go-round, I wouldn't add anything from me. I would go straight to Joe for the second thing, next paragraph, Contrology develops the body uniformly. And then I would go to at least starting the list of exercises on the mat, and hopefully in the right order, and ideally being able to recite the entire order like you would the ABCs. It's no different insofar as it's memorized. And to the extent that you memorize the sequence of the exercises in Joe's book, you have memorized not only the letters of the alphabet, but the order in which they come, which is relevant to the sequence. Those three things. As a presenter, just lay out the three things straight from Joe. And have copies of Joe's book out in the hall. To buy, of course, if they haven't bought one on the way in, so that they can look in there and actually see the words that you say are number 1 and number 2, and the sequence, hopefully in the same order that exists in the book, right? Which makes me want to go to number 3. And it's a quote off of something I heard on television, where the comment was, results matter. So that's my number 3 is, as a quote, results matter. They make a difference. And as a Pilates instructor, you're looking to make a difference, and you're looking to make a difference how? Over the longest time possible or over the shortest time possible, especially if pain is involved, right? People in pain don't want to take a long, steady route out of it. They want out right now. And so to whatever extent you're efficient in getting them out of pain without putting them in further danger and but to the extent that you're efficient, that's Alan Herdman's word from England, right? But being efficient matters. Why? Because results matter. Okay, and then number 4. Last week it was fascinating talking about biomechanics is my usual word for what I'm referring to, which is how the body engages itself mechanically to get from one place to another, to escape the jaws of gravity, or to swim like a fish through an ocean of air. So in the resonance with, it was on Saturday, I guess, but talking about body dynamics. And to me, that's a studio name in Boulder, run by Lindsay, and because I keep coming to the word dynamics and wondering if dynamics, do I mean more dynamics or do I mean mechanics, right? Led to further research and study, a scratching's worth, but some. To the point where mechanics is definitely the superset, definitely the broad category. And within mechanics, there's dynamic mechanics and statics mechanics. Now, I have no idea what statics mechanics means, other than like it doesn't move versus dynamic, which means it does, or maybe that understanding is completely off. But to my level of looking, dynamics has 2 main subcategories. Did I say mechanics? Mechanics has 2 main subcategories, dynamics and statics. And so much of last week's rumblings and resonant lingerings take me to summarize into how to think whole body. How to think whole body. I mean, what is the target? Well, first of all, right, what is the target? Joe called his method contrology. So that being the target, control being the determination of whether you have control or not, right? Because I want you to be a presenter, of course, it's number 1 is the definition, and number 2 is contrology. Well, see, and I would go through them and in order and reverberate or repeat the merry-go-round, and yet go deeper. So you already told them that contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, and you can read that right here. And then 1945. And then if you want, you can say, where is my book? That's what you can say. There it is. You can say, but see, I don't even want to get to the statement of the whole definition yet. Just by saying that, look, Joe's definition is body, mind, and spirit, and MMP takes that to mean, now you don't have to, this is just one point of view, but in the MMP point of view, body, mind, and spirit is being, thinking, and observing. And see, then you've come down another level in explanation. Then I would go to the number 2 thing that you already said the first time around was contrology develops the body uniformly. And then take that to the next level, which is what? Which is one giant leap into core new tension. Because core new tension is what gives you the uniform engagement you're after in the performance of contrology, the mat, the sequence. But to uniformly distribute the load, in my opinion, through the eyes of this point of view, it's just a fact that the body engages itself in core new tension. And in so doing, most uniformly distributes the load of itself, and in so doing creates tension between the endpoints of rotation that make alignment sensational. So in light of all the ICS words, mechanics, dynamics, statics, biomechanics, right? In the light of all of those words, I want you to maintain an awareness of how core new tension is a natural expression with millions of years of evolution behind it. I'm not making anything up. I'm just pointing it out. And as a presenter, you can do the same thing. Because it's as real from me to you, it will be as real from you to anybody else that hasn't gotten it. And that takes me to my summary, I think, in a way. Gotten it. See, what is there to get? Or is there anything to get at all? And so, if this broadcast is primarily for my presenters, what I'm asking is, do we share the experience? See, that's the question. Michael Miller-Pilates says, or describes Pilates as an experience. Explains, really. Pilates is an experience, and that experience is what? Is complete coordination of being, thinking, and observing. And to do it, see, Joe's next paragraph says how this is done. Contrology develops the body uniformly. That's how it's done. And so if you're not doing it uniformly, if you're not whole body, then you're somewhere other than the way that Pilates accomplishes its means. Because contrology develops the body uniformly. This is the MMP point of view. And so, like, in terms of my presenters and the challenge of presenting, it's like, are you willing to admit that the experience exists? To where you can say, yeah, when I'm doing Pilates, there are these, when I'm trying to do Pilates, when I'm trying to do it, when I'm diving into the concentration of being totally concentrated on the purpose of the exercises, you know, when I'm doing that, is there an experience that comes out of, or that shows up in the midst of that effort? Because if not, see, if you're saying, I don't know what you're talking about, I do Pilates, and Pilates is what I use, and I love it, and I've been doing it for years, and yet maybe their level of interacting with it has never been you being Yoda and them being sent into the cave of their own sensation in order to listen to and discern a difference so that they can take more control in it. It's about holding the curtain aside and introducing a student to how to react to what comes from their own movement, the feedback of their own movement. So in one word, Pilates is exercise. In two words, it's corrective exercise. And that corrective feedback loop is most closely coming off of, or most closely feeding, the individual doing the moving. Sure, it's great to be a Pilates instructor, sit back and say, tuck your chin and bring your knees in closer to your body, or whatever the instruction is. But the holding the curtain aside is teaching your student how to listen to their own sensation and reach deeper into the control of it based on their evaluation of that sensation. And that's what I think you're doing when you're coordinating being, thinking, and observing. Okay? So that's plenty of information, and yet if someone really wanted to know more, they ought to take the tour and go from here to the presentation where you explain things, because that's as far as you're willing to explain it without getting paid. And they'll say fine, and it won't matter, and yet they'll still try to get what they want without having to pay for it. And yet there you are here on the gondola, and here the gondola ride is, where you can take a look around or not, right? The presentation is an offer for the point of view. Let others decide if they want to see that view or not. And I think I want to add to that, don't make it contingent upon them whether or not you make the presentation. Even if it's on your own to yourself, or privately out to the web, or one and both, who knows what they will make of technology to come. So see, if there isn't the experience to be had of completely coordinating, being, thinking, and observing, then it'd be hard to be a presenter, because the presenter knows that according to MMP, it's an experience. And you can talk about it, and you can explain that, and be a good explainer. But it's harder to explain something that you have no experience with or from. And yet then if you do seem to, yes, I get that experience that you're talking about, then you come from the confidence that you're speaking of something that you have a personal experience with, and that all you're doing is sharing yourself from personal experience. And everything else doesn't matter, because all people really want is the essence of what you have to offer. And when you add 2 and 2, the key point is whether or not they just take it from you, or whether you exercise control and therefore lend more karma to the interaction. By being paid. So my notes say then one of the reasons it makes it easy to be a presenter is because you know the target. And you know the target of the experience and the moment of the doing, and you know the target of the performance of what lies in the original mat work that you may be moving towards or resonating with. You know the target as a state of mind, and you know the target as a choreography of performance. And right after Joe defines his method, he makes it an issue as to the means that you do Pilates, and Contrology develops the body uniformly. Not as a result, but it's the way it does it. That's the means of doing it. I mean, you can argue that's the result too, and then try to swim backwards from that, but really, it's up to you how do you get there. But the key thing is that whole body matters. And then when you're up looking around at the point of view is that core nu tension is the way you get to whole body. Now you may not know what that is, or you may be stiff as a brick, or way too limber, or just not know what that means. But at least the presentation, the explanation, is that to get to whole body it takes core nu tension. That's the message. If you can point to how the body, in its ability to manifest itself, has anything more sophisticated than the endpoints of tension, that I'm pointing to, just pointing to, didn't make up, just pointing to, and that collectively they're there, if for no other reason, to contribute to the movement of the body through space, to uniform engagement. So, from the MMP point of view, all of the ICSs, mechanics, dynamics, statics, biomechanics, ICSs, are contributory to the dynamic that most efficiently empowers oneself to move through space. And then I think one layer lower is pointing out that the distinction between thinking and being is what? I said it wrong. Thinking and observing is what? They're two different parts of the brain. Prefrontal cortex is thinking in MMP. And amygdala, hippocampal areas of the brain that feed information into the prefrontal cortex, that's where the observing happens. It's not body, mind, and more mind. It's body, mind, and something else. And you can take the word spirit into an interpretation of spiritual, and you have just gone into more mind, more thinking about, interpreting. MMP keeps the target within the individual human being. Their body, their thinking, and their observing as such the two different parts of the brain that need to coordinate to be present to make survival likely, more possible, more enjoyable. Because life can't live forever. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, evaluate points of view, see behind the curtain. Connect the dots. I think that goes in there. Connect the dots. Evaluate points of view. And then add 2 and 2. And because this is to you as a presenter, whether you ever become a licensed presenter or not, knowing that what I want from you as a student is your ability to explain the two things, and that in making the explanation, however informal or formal, however much or how little, you get paid in advance as part of the presentation. It's integral to the point of view. And whether you understand why it was or not, afterwards, at least, I will have been paid and you will have gotten the presentation. Just like going to a movie. Direct your thinking. And be willing to go beyond what's common knowledge, at least in your own mind and your own practice, as so many of you have, to where you know what you're doing, and that's enough for your utilization of it without illuminating it. Direct your thinking. Geist.